The Flames season ended 2 months ago today, and I thought that that's enough time to really, reflect on who needs to be better next season.
You're Locked On Flames, your daily podcast on the Calgary Flames. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Locked On Flames. As always, I am your host, Jess Belmosto, and thank you so much for joining me. Today, I was thinking that we could talk about the players that, really need to step it up next season and who has the most to prove, because I feel like there was a lot of good this season, but we still needed more from certain players, and we'll talk about those guys coming up next on Locked On Flames. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. We're here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, your team every day. And let's start it off talking about, I guess, the criteria I'm looking for. I'm looking for players that, were obviously with the Flames for the whole season. I think it's unfair to talk about Joel Farabee and Morgan Frost in this way, because their expectations were different. And I think that everyone kind of gives them a little bit of grace when it comes to the transition period during a midseason trade. And for me, I think there are players on this team that I went into the season expecting a good, reasonable expectations, and they didn't meet that threshold. And I think that these guys have quite a bit more to prove and more room to grow. And of course, up first, we're going to talk about Martin Pospisil. Martin Pospisil is a player that I have a lot of respect for. He has battled through injuries and concussions like no other Flame I've seen in my time covering this team, and really probably uh, one of the most unfortunately inspiring stories, because 5 concussions at the age of 24 years old is a lot, and to consider retiring before you even make your NHL debut, that's got to be tough. And to do that while you're on the other side of the globe alone, while your family's over in Europe, unable to visit, that's got to be pretty lonely and a tough reality to face. And I would say that's tough for anyone, but especially someone as young as he was. But he did not retire. He obviously ended up getting called up to the NHL last season, or I guess technically 2 seasons ago now, with Connor Zary, and made his mark. He came in strong. He let everyone know that he plays a physical game. He's not afraid to shy away from dangerous hits. Questionable hits, I would say. The physicality, I think, can get in the way of his game. And, it is what it is. He definitely toned it down this season, I would say, which is one of the bigger areas that he needed to improve on last year. So just the fact that, he started the season taking some severely bad penalties, costing the Flames some games. And he kind of, he reined it in. I'll give him that. I will. However, he just took a ginormous step back in terms of production and on ice performance. So when he came up with the Flames in 2023-24, he had 8 goals and 24 points in 63 games. And he had 25 points and just 4 goals in 81 games. Now, I don't expect him to be a 20 goal scorer. To me, Martin Pospisil has kind of I don't want to say fallen into a bottom six role, but that's just the type of player that I see him as, at least on this roster. Given the log jam and just the amount of forwards that the Flames have. And I think that he, due to his liability with physicality and taking penalties and yada, 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 I do think that it is worth keeping his minutes limited. I don't think that he needs to be given 20 minutes a night or 16 minutes, whatever the case may be. We know that he is obviously not a heavy goal scorer. However, he was doing very well when he was playing with Kadri and Zary, and obviously we didn't see much of that line this season, and I want to see that line again. I know that Huberdeau really found his stride with Kadri, and I think that that just, again, goes to show you the type of player Kadri is, because if he can take these two young guys under their wings and get great production out of him and Zary, and then play with Huberdeau and bring him back to 28 goals, it just speaks to his level of talent. But I digress. I want to see more from Martin Pospisil this season. I want to see, 10, 15 goals. He has 1 year left on his contract, and I don't foresee the Flames looking to do anything long term at the end of this contract. I think that obviously he's had the chance to play at the NHL level. He has a lot more to prove, and I think given the opportunity, he will solidify himself as a bottom six NHLer, and that's fine. Every team needs that, and we talk about it ad nauseum on this podcast about how the role of the fourth liner has changed. It's not just your 35-year-old plus veterans out there eating up minutes. There's been a serious shift in that, and I really hope that we do see more from Pospisil this season. I hope that he takes another step in his game and continues to be smarter about the decisions he makes in his play. But coming up next, we are going to talk about Yegor Sharangovich and just how disappointing this past season was for him here on Locked On Flames. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. I am a big fan of the no-shell variety, but especially the salt and vinegar flavor. They are delicious. They're easy to find on the shelf at any store. I always have some in my house and at my desk at work because they are so good and give me the fuel to keep going. And they're just a delicious snack. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Thanks everyone for tuning into today's episode of Locked On Flames. Make sure you're subscribed and following the show wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. We're here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, your team every day. And Yegor. Oh, Yegor. When he came over in the Tyler Toffoli trade, I think the expectation was you were getting a bottom six forward. There were low expectations and limited, it looked like a bad trade because Tyler Toffoli was just coming off of a 30-plus goal season. And you traded for a younger guy who at best had 25 goals, but struggled the following season. And he came in, played a full season, 31 goals, 59 points. He was a minus 29, which I did not realize. I think plus minus is such like a it's a very interesting statistic and kind of outdated, which is funny because I'm going to use it a little bit later. But yeah, so we saw a different Yegor Sharangovich than New Jersey had seen. And he actually was seeing a lot more ice time too. He went from 14 minutes and 25 seconds to 17 minutes and 19 seconds a game. And you knew that he was a defensive liability. It wasn't a secret. It was one of the most like red flags that the biggest red flag on his scouting report, I guess, when he was traded. But after that season, Craig Conroy goes and signs him to a 5-year extension when he has 1 year remaining on his contract. I don't think you can just hand that out after one season with the team. I don't, especially with how out of character that is and just how big of an outlier that was. And a lot of us were saying that when he signed the contract. And then this year, he starts the season injured and battled through a few injuries this season and was just really inconsistent all season long. And he's a player that you can put at center, you can put at wing, wherever in your lineup, but it was just too few and far between for anything this year. I wanted to see more from him. I wanted to see better offense. To score 17 goals in 73 games, I mean, that's fine, I guess. Not really, but he was just most of those goals came in like the last 11 games of the season anyways. And he was a healthy scratch one night. And that was used to kind of, inject, hopefully start a fire under him, light a fire underneath him. And it did until it didn't. And I think that's one of the biggest issues that the Flames are going to have with this roster construction is, of course, dealing with the inconsistency and the streakiness of your offense as a whole. And, I want to see at least a 20-goal season out of Sharangovich next year. 15 to 20, I think, for the first year of this new contract and making $5 million a year. I personally think that 20 goals is realistic, especially when you look at his career stats: 16, 24, 13, 31, 17. He's capable of scoring north of 10, but I think 15 is a fair starting point to where I would prefer him to be as close to 20 as possible. And I don't see the Flames ever considering trading him. And I, quite frankly, don't see any team calling for him. Unless there's something that these scouts and general managers see that I don't. But for me, I think it's, again, just more realistic to put him in your lineup and figure out if he's best used as a center or a wing, because with him being, a little bit more of a defensive liability, do you really want him at center? Probably not, considering you need a little bit more, defensive skills at center. But I'm just disappointed in the season that he had. Very inconsistent, very streaky. And then by the time it felt like he was heating up, the season ended. And that's tough, because you obviously want to see these guys succeed. You want to see them do well. But when they go ahead and only heat up in the last 10 games of the season. Like, what are you supposed to do? You ran out of time. Should have figured it out sooner. What was the joke? Oh, he switched up his pregame meal. Isn't that what it was? But hopefully he has a nice long off season this summer. Is able to be fully adjusted to life in Calgary, settled in, and goes out and has another great performance. We have seen it become a pattern with players. At least I say pattern. It's really Huberdeau and Coleman are the only two that I've truly noticed this with the last few seasons. But players that sign in Calgary after obviously playing elsewhere for their majority of their career, it takes them about 3 seasons to settle in and really play like how you expect them to play. And this will be Sharangovich's 3rd year in Calgary. This past season was Huberdeau's 3rd year, and he had 28 goals. Blake Coleman had 30 goals in his 3rd season. So hopefully, we're seeing that continue, and it's just going to be a long 5-year contract. If not, and you have to look at other options at that point. But coming up next, we are going to talk about a player that I have spent a lot of time talking about this offseason, from trade speculation to a broken fibula to being a minus 38. Coming up here next on Locked On Flames. Thanks, everyone, for hanging out with me today on Locked On Flames. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcast, as well as YouTube. And you're following me on Twitter at Jess Belmosto. So, Rasmus Andersson, right, had a very bad year. And there were circumstances, obviously, heading into the season that no one planned for. I'm sure losing your best friend unexpectedly like that takes a toll on you and can affect you in many different ways. And that is why I have tried to give Rasmus Andersson the benefit of the doubt, because number one, I know what that's like. And then to just like have to continue on and pretend everything's fine when it's not. Number two, he had a new defensive pairing partner in Kevin Ball, who played a very sheltered role in New Jersey. So it's going to be a little different. But unfortunately, it just was not a good season for Rasmus Andersson. He broke his leg he played like the last 12 games with a broken fibula. And it was so obvious that he was hurt and injured. I went to the final 3 games, home games of the season. And before that, he was consistently missing morning skate and practice. And then he was first off the ice for warm-ups and was never out there for long. And then it comes out that he had the broken fibula. And it's just, I have a very difficult time justifying playing through injuries in general, but especially when your team is trying to make that playoff push. The Flames needed to win these final games of the season, and he was a minus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the last 4 games of the season. And I get it. It could have been worse. But you don't know that until it happens. And it was just his exit interview. I get it. I think that he was very over the season. I think that he knew his name was going to be around all summer in trade rumors and extension talks, you name it. He was over it. But to me and many other people, it felt like he knew that he had played his last game as a Calgary Flame. And that stinks. Um, you know, this was a guy who, before Mackenzie Weegar was traded to the Flames, it felt like Rasmus Andersson was next in line to be captain. It felt as if after Matthew Tkachuk left, like Andersson was the heartbeat of this team alongside Mackenzie Weegar. But Andersson was just, pounding it home like he was the second longest tenured Flame at that point behind Backlund. And he lived and died by the Calgary Flames. And unfortunately, as it happens with players, you get older and your gameplay starts to decline. And that's what we've seen. And I mean, Rasmus Andersson has never been a particularly offensively inclined defenseman. His career high is 11 goals, which he tied this season. But this season, he had an extensive amount of penalty minutes compared to previous seasons. He went from a 26 to a 47 to a 60. All right. That is a very big jump. And I think for Andersson, you do have that big responsibility of taking on Kevin Ball and having him play 18, 19, 20 minutes a night with you. Really more than that, because you're both on special teams, but it was a weird season for him. It just felt like anytime he was on the ice, there was going to be a goal. It was going to be a goal against. And to be a franchise worst minus 38 is crazy work. Like, that takes a lot of effort. That's not easy to accomplish. And it just stinks because Rasmus Andersson, again, has been one of the longest tenured Flames, the second longest on this roster. The second, homegrown talent. And for it to just kind of potentially end the way it did is really discouraging, because we've talked about it a lot on this podcast. He went from an out of shape, lazy 18-year-old to a top pairing defenseman with the help of the Flames organization and specifically Ryan Huska. And we all know that Rasmus Andersson is better than what we saw last year. You'd be kidding yourself if you said otherwise. But Conroy talked about it on Barn Burner today. The Flames have term and a number that they're comfortable with money-wise. Andersson and his camp have a term and number they want. And if they can't come to an agreement this offseason, that's fine. They know that Rasmus Andersson's going to go out there and do his best regardless, because it pumps up his value. And that's fair. I mean, of course, you're not going to purposely stink. Again, you're not doing anyone any good. But to me, Conroy making it clear that Andersson kind of needed a breather and a mental break from hockey after this season is, I think it's a good thing, because if you don't disconnect from work, regardless of what it is, you're going to fry yourself. You're going to drive yourself insane and be burnt out. And we want all of these guys to come back next, or, in the fall, stronger and well rested, prepared. And I want to see Rasmus Andersson maybe not be a minus 38. I want to see, I miss seeing him, quarterback the power play. And I understand that's Mackenzie Weegar's job now. Like that's not a problem. I understand that. But I miss the confidence that he had in his play. And I've talked about it before, but I feel like since he had that accident in Detroit on the motorized scooter, he has not looked or played the same. So that is just something to keep in mind when you're evaluating his drop off. Not just his drop off, but his confidence on the ice, his self-assurance, I guess. There's just a severe lack of confidence, it feels like, in his play. And it's showing. Going from a plus 30 in 2021-22. Those were the glory days, man. I wish we had more of those. To a minus 38 in 3 seasons is crazy. But honestly, out of all of these players, I want to see them all succeed. I want to see all of them, regardless if they're in a Flames jersey or not. I think that they all have room to improve and can and absolutely will do that. It's just about bouncing back in time when the time's right. Hopefully that's game 1. But that'll do it for me here on today's episode of Locked on Flames. Thank you all so much for joining me. I hope you have a fantastic evening. The Panthers may win the cup tonight, or the Oilers may force a game 7. So I hope Panthers win. Make sure you're subscribed to every podcast as well as YouTube. We're here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week. Your team every day, and I'll see you later.